Thank you all for attending my presentation today. Today we'll be discussing the theory of expectancy violations. To get started, I'll just give you a brief overview of the history of the theory, including the theorists who developed it, and also a brief definition of the theory before we move on and discuss some examples of expectancy violations theory, and end the presentation with how you can apply this theory in your everyday life. To get started, the theorist who developed this theory was a lady by the name of Judy Burgoon. She developed this theory back in the 1980s when she was actually in school. She originally developed the theory to explain how people's expectations are violated in relation to their personal space, or as communication scholars would call it, proxemics. So she originally developed this theory to explain how people's proxemic expectations are violated. However, the theory was later expanded to explain how any expectation is violated. Not just personal space violations, it can be psychological expectations, emotional expectations. So that's what the theory was later developed to explain, and that's where the theory is today. The definition of the theory, according to Judy Burgoon and her colleague Gerald Hale, so the definition is, the nonverbal expectations violation model posits that people hold expectations about the nonverbal behaviors of others. In other words, people develop expectations about the way other people should behave. When people's expectations are violated, or when their expectations aren't met, the violation can be viewed as either positive or negative, which may come as a surprise to you, simply because of the language used, because whenever something is considered violated, that's automatically viewed as negative. However, not all negative violations of expectations are a bad thing. There are three factors that determine whether a violation of an expectation will be considered positive or negative. The three factors are the expectation itself, the nature of the violation, and also the people involved in the interaction. So the person who originally has the expectation, and then the person who violates that expectation. Let me just give you a brief real-life example to help you better understand exactly what expectancy violations theory is. So my sister and I both live in Lynchburg. We both work at Liberty University. I work in the military affairs office, and she works in the facilities department. Some days my sister has the day off while I have to go to work. Well, when I get off of work after working for 8 hours very hard, and I know that she's been at home all day, potentially doing nothing, but at the very best not doing very much. When I get off of work and I'm driving home, it's possible that I would develop an expectation that dinner would be on the table by the time I get home. Again, she's been off all day. It would be natural for me to expect that she would have dinner ready, knowing that I've just gotten off of work, especially since she knows my work schedule. Well, if I get home expecting that dinner's on the table and dinner's not ready, and in fact, if I get home and she's still in bed, that is a negative violation of my expectation. And that will affect my interactions with my sister from that point forward, most likely resulting in some kind of conflict. That's a negative violation that is actually negative. But to give you an example of a negative violation that's actually positive, if I get off of work, same scenario where she's been home all day, I get off of work and I expect that dinner won't be on the table for whatever reason, thinking she's lazy or whatever. If I get off of work expecting that dinner won't be on the table, I get home and dinner is on the table, the apartment's clean and all of this stuff, that is also a negative violation of my expectation, because she didn't meet my expectation, but it was a negative violation of my expectation that resulted in a positive interaction from that point forward. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how a negative expectancy violation can actually be positive. Obviously, a positive expectation of my violation would be if I expected dinner to not be ready and dinner were not ready. That would be positive. That would be considered a positive, positively meeting my expectation, because I expected it to not be ready, it wasn't ready. Let me go ahead and give you, in addition to that, a couple other examples, real-world examples of when people have expectations and what would happen if those expectations are violated. Expectancy violations theory has often been studied in different contexts, one context in particular being the realm of education. Several theorists have studied how students' expectations of their teachers affect the end result of their learning. And in fact, one study found that students who possessed higher expectations of their instructors going into a course were actually more satisfied with the instruction they received at the end of the course, which was an interesting violation of expectation that actually ended up being positive. Another example of when expectations are held in a social context is actually in the realm of social media, and in particular Facebook. To give you an example of this, Facebook users have developed a kind of social norms standard that they expect of other Facebook users. For example, everyone knows that everyone stalks people on Facebook, but a social norm that we all hold of other people is that you don't talk about your stalking behaviors on Facebook. So basically, we all know, I know that you stalk someone on Facebook, but I also expect that you won't talk about it. And so if you violate my expectation and delve into all the details of everyone you've stalked this week on Facebook, that's a violation of my expectation that could honestly cause a little bit of an awkward situation. One final example I'll give you is in the context of forgiveness, in that when someone apologizes to another person, they go into that apology scenario expecting that their apology will be accepted. Based on past experience, more often than not, people's apologies are accepted. Therefore, if a person goes into an apology scenario, apologizes to someone they've offended, and then their apology is not accepted, that is a negative violation of an expectation, and that will most likely result in conflict, perhaps, but it will result in negative interactions with that person from that point forward. So those were just some examples of different scenarios in which people hold expectations. Obviously, everyone has expectations in any scenario, but those were three specific examples I wanted to give you to help you better understand the nature of expectancy violations theory and how it applies. So to wrap up this presentation, let me go ahead and just give you a couple ways in which you can apply this theory. Even though you're not necessarily a communication scholar, you can apply this theory. First of all, you just need to understand that you do have expectations of others, and others have expectations of you. Sometimes they will meet your expectations, sometimes they won't. Basically, the best way to ensure that your expectation is met by another person is to communicate your expectation to that person. They can't know your expectation unless you tell them. So that concludes my presentation for today. We'll go ahead and I'll give you a couple minutes to have a question and answer time so that anything I didn't cover in the presentation, you can go ahead and understand. Thank you for your time.